At the start of the film, Fred and his wife Karen visit Fred's mother in the hospital. She has lost her memory due to her mental condition and doesn't have much time left. The next day, Fred goes to a job interview and gets hired. On his way home, he comes across a boy with a mark on his face. Seeing him triggers a flashback. Fred remembers a girl named Cindy, some unknown men, and a frightening face. The memory quickly fades, bringing him back to the present. That night, Fred looks at an old college photo of his friends and notices that someone has scratched out Cindy's face. This brings back another flashback of his college days, where he bumps into a boy named Sebastian and sees Cindy nearby. Karen snaps him out of it, asking what he was doing. Fred brushes it off, saying he was just organizing some things outside. The next day at work, Fred sketches Cindy's face. Later, he meets with his college teacher and asks about her. The teacher tells him that Cindy never took her final graduation exam. He also reveals that she had started using a called Mary before mysteriously disappearing. Fred gets another flashback where Cindy is standing right in front of him. Suddenly, a small boy steps out of a car and says a few incomplete words to Fred before leaving. Coming out of the flashback, Fred returns home, but another memory surfaces. This time, he recalls taking an exam with Cindy sitting in front of him. After finishing, he goes to the bathroom, where he sees Sebastian buying from the same small boy. Once again, the boy says a few unfinished words to Fred before walking away. Back in the present, Fred starts sketching again, lost in his thoughts. As he pieces together the boy's words, he realizes the message. "I am in your lobby near..." Startled, he rushes outside to check, but finds no one there. At that moment, the boy with the mark on his face appears nearby before disappearing again. Suddenly, another flashback hits Fred. Cindy is pleading with him, "Don't leave me." Then he sees that terrifying face again. Before he can process it, some people from his building shake him out of the flashback, bringing him back to reality. The next day, Fred visits his mother and shows her a painting he made as a child. It's of a yellow house, his dream home. Looking at it brings back another childhood memory. In the flashback, little Fred is happily painting when his mother calls him for dinner, but he refuses. She warns him, "If you don't listen, Santa won't come." Ignoring her, he leaves. When he returns later, he finds gifts waiting for him. That's when he realizes Santa isn't real. His mother had lied. Angry and upset, Fred breaks his mother's favorite statue. Seeing her sad expression, guilt washes over him. Back in the present, Fred snaps out of the memory and notices something strange in an old photo. Sebastian is in it too. This triggers another flashback. He remembers stepping out of the bathroom in college and Sebastian handing him, telling him to hide them so no one would suspect anything. When Fred returns to reality, he tells Karen, "My mother has forgotten me. She's not the same anymore." That night, he heads to a nightclub, where he runs into Sebastian for the first time in 13 years. As soon as he sees him, old memories start rushing back. Fred asks, "Did you ever talk to Cindy after graduation?" Sebastian simply replies, "No." Fred frowns, deep in thought. "I keep remembering things. I feel like something bad happened to Cindy." Sebastian shrugs. "I don't know about Cindy, but I do remember when you took Myrrh for the first time." Fred is instantly pulled into another flashback. He remembers how he and Sebastian once sneaked into a restricted area with two girls, Cindy and Evelyn. While hiding, Sebastian handed Fred a pill of myrrh and said, "Take it, it'll help." Before Fred could decide, Cindy gently told him, "There's no pressure, only take it if you want to." Without thinking much, Fred swallowed the pill. Within moments, he started seeing strange, rippling waves in his vision. Everything around him felt distorted. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Sebastian were drunk, laughing loudly. Fred, now lost in the effects of the saw Cindy walking away and instinctively followed her. Just as he was about to reach her, he suddenly snaps back to the present, out of the flashback. The next day, Fred visits Sebastian's house, where he finds Evelyn there as well. Hoping for answers, he asks them both about Cindy, but neither of them knows where she went. As Fred processes this, another flashback pulls him in. In the memory, he was about to enter a club, but Cindy stopped him and led him away. She confessed, "I don't want a life where I just study, find a job, and work forever. It feels like a prison." She wanted to escape reality and just lose herself in. Fred, feeling uneasy, said, "Sebastian must be looking for us." So they returned to the club. The moment they arrived, Fred noticed that same boy with the mark on his face. The boy muttered some incomplete words to him again before disappearing. Suddenly, Fred is pulled back to the present. He's in his office. His boss looks disappointed and tells him, "Your performance is getting worse. If this continues, I'll have to fire you. Also, be ready for tomorrow's morning presentation." Just then, Fred's phone rings. It's Sebastian. "I remember something," Sebastian says urgently. Fred quickly meets him in the car, where Evelyn is also present. Sebastian recalls, "We went to meet some people who promised to give us pure myrrh. The we used before only had traces of it. The meeting was in an old building." Then he adds something chilling. "After that, you'll never find Cindy." Hearing this, Fred feels a deep unease, but they all decide to check out that old building. When they arrive, the place is deserted and eerie. Still, the three of them step inside. As they approach room 308, Fred is hit with another flashback. In the memory, all four of them, Fred, Cindy, Sebastian, and Evelyn, were in this very room. Sebastian handed out pure mirror to everyone. One by one, they all took the Fred takes the murd pill to the bathroom. Even though he doesn't want to, he swallows it. Moments later, Evelyn rushes in, panicked. She warns him, "Whatever happens, don't take that. It's not just a." Before she can explain further, blood starts dripping from her nose. Fred, already feeling the effects, looks at her and says, "It's too late. I already took it." Terrified, Evelyn runs away. Fred stumbles back into the main room, but it's now completely deserted. The emptiness sends a chill down his spine. Suddenly, he is pulled into another flashback. He sees the same little boy again, standing nearby. This time, Fred remembers a vision of frightening people from his past. Confused, Fred mutters, "He's just a kid, but he takes so much murd." A woman's voice behind him responds firmly, "He's not a child." Back in the present time, Fred looks around. The boy is there again, along with the others. But then Cindy appears behind him. She leans in and whispers something in his ear. Instantly, Fred is thrown back in time once more. This time in the past, Fred tells Cindy, "I feel like I've gotten older, like the past and present are merging." Cindy stares at him and replies, "I understand now what murd has done to us." She continues, "It's not about places or time. No matter where you are, time will move normally. But murd lets you exist in multiple places at once. Your memories, they're real, and they're happening all at the same time." Just then, a woman's voice interrupts again, warning him, "Control yourself." In an instant, Fred is pulled back to the present. Desperate for answers, he looks around at everyone and demands, "What do you all want from me?" But before anyone can answer, a flood of flashbacks crashes over him. The boy with the mark on his face starts speaking. His words feel hypnotic, echoing in Fred's mind. Fred clutches his head and starts shouting, overwhelmed by the chaos inside his mind. Then suddenly, a blinding yellow light bursts before his eyes. It pulls him back to his childhood again. This time, he sees the terrifying face from his past. The face is screaming at him. Fred suddenly snaps back to his office, but something is wrong. Strange people surround him. Overwhelmed by the chaos in his mind, he grabs a lamp and hits the child. The moment the lamp strikes, a strange mark appears on the boy's face. Then, in a horrifying realization, Fred recognizes the boy. It's the same one with the mark he had been seeing all along. The boy exists because of him. Before Fred can process what just happened, Sebastian appears, grabs him, and pulls him away. As Sebastian drags Fred out of the office, Cindy and the others silently watch him leave. Then everything fades. Fred wakes up with Karen beside him, but before he can say anything, another flashback pulls him under. In the memory, he is back in his past, violently vomiting, his body rejecting the full murd he had taken. His mother's at the door, knocking worriedly. "Open the door! Are you okay?" she asks. Fred can't respond. Then the flashback twists, and Fred sees that terrifying face again. It's in the shadows of his office, watching, waiting. Before he can react, he snaps back to the present. Fred finds himself lying on his bed, his phone buzzing with endless messages from his boss. He had completely forgotten. He has to give a presentation. Panicked, Fred quickly gets dressed to leave. As he rushes out, his eyes fall on his desk. Countless sketches of Cindy. Something feels off. The moment he steps outside, time blurs again. Suddenly, he is no longer in his home. Instead, he's back on the day of his final graduation exam. His mother is yelling at him, "You're ruining everything because of those Focus on your future." But Fred is also in his office elevator at the same time. His mind is fractured. He is both a student running late to an exam and a man rushing to work. Then the exam hall bell rings. Fred steps into the exam hall and into the elevator at the same time. Fred is in the office correcting his presentation papers, but his mind is slipping. When he glances up, he sees Cindy's empty bench in his classroom. His past self is taking an exam, but Cindy isn't there. In the office, his boss calls him, demanding he give the presentation, but Fred can't respond. His reality keeps shifting. His mind is being pulled between past and present, between the classroom and the office. Then, in both timelines, he sees the boy with the mark again. In frustration, present Fred turns to past Fred. "Do you always live here? Am I trapped in your jail?" But to his shock, past Fred asks him the exact same question. Fred suddenly remembers Cindy's words. "You can make a different choice in every moment." Determined, Fred smashes the TV in the office and breaks the bench in the classroom. Everything shifts. Now present Fred is back at his desk, desk, correcting papers. Meanwhile, past Fred is with his mother, who is screaming at him. Something inside Fred snaps. "I don't want this life," he mutters. "I'm making a different choice." Now in the present, he heads toward the old building. At the same time in the past, he also walks toward the same building. The two timelines overlap. Past and present versions of Fred move toward the same destination. As soon as he reaches room 308, everything blacks out. When Fred opens his eyes, he is with Cindy. She looks at him and says, "I know what Murd did to us." Fred, still confused, asks, "Then why am I still here?" Cindy gives him a soft smile. "You never left. You were only trapped in your own memories." Fred stares at her, realization sinking in. "I thought I was trying to save you, but in reality, you were trying to save me." Suddenly, Fred snaps back to that familiar moment. The moment he first bumped into Sebastian. Cindy is standing there alive. Fred looks at her and asks, "Where do you want to go?" Cindy smiles and says, "Somewhere." A bright yellow light flashes. When the light fades, Fred and Cindy find themselves in a yellow house. They are happy, hosting a party. Fred and Cindy are living a good life, free from the past. After settling into their new life, Fred paints a picture of the Sahara Desert. The moment the painting is complete, he and Cindy suddenly teleport to the vast, golden sands of the Sahara. In this Sahara timeline, Cindy is still by his side. They wander the desert, looking for a way forward. Soon they see a man driving by and ask him for a lift. As they sit in the car, Fred glances at his sketchbook. To his shock, there's a familiar drawing inside. It's the same old building they had visited before. And just like that, the car takes them to that very same building. As they step out, a strange man approaches them. His expression is serious as he warns, "Our supply is running out. You need to leave now." Fred feels an eerie sense of déjà vu. His eyes wander toward the walls of the building, where several sketches are drawn. But before he can process them, the world shifts. Now Fred finds himself homeless, wandering the streets. He is digging through a garbage bin, searching for something, though he doesn't know what. Then he finds it, a small necklace. Holding it gently, he whispers, "This is for Cindy." Then suddenly he is back at the old building. Fred turns to Cindy, showing her the necklace. But as he does, the necklace slips from his hands. It falls to the ground and shatters. The moment it breaks, a buried memory resurfaces. Fred remembers when he was a child, when he broke his mother's most treasured statue. The guilt, the sadness, the regret, it all floods back. Before he can even react, the world shifts again. Now Fred is back at the hospital, standing beside his mother. For the first time in years, he apologizes to her, an apology that had remained unspoken since childhood. His mother, weak and distant, moves her lips slightly as if trying to say something. As Fred watches her lips, another wave of flashbacks crashes over him. And then, finally, he understands. The terrifying face he had been seeing all this time, the one he thought belonged to Cindy, was actually his mother's face. As a child, Fred fell down the stairs, and instead of comforting him, his mother punished him harshly. This trauma caused him to perceive her face as something terrifying, a fear buried so deeply that he later confused it with Cindy's, believing something terrible had happened to her. Now in the hospital, his mother finally remembers him and calls his name. Overwhelmed with emotion, Fred holds her hand and cries. Memories of his childhood flood back, revealing the truth. The face haunting him all along was his mother's. Fred finds himself back with Cindy, where she once told him, "I know what Murd did to us." But this time, Fred tells her, "I found who I was looking for. I can't go with you." Back in college, Fred chooses differently. He doesn't go with Cindy. Instead, he heads straight to his exam hall, completes his test, and scratches out Cindy's photo. This is when he meets Karen, and over time, their friendship blossoms. In the present, Fred delivers a great presentation at work, impressing everyone. Returning home, he and Karen are happy together, preparing for Christmas. However, his mother eventually passes away, leaving Fred devastated. Lost in grief, he recalls his childhood, the fear, the guilt, and his mother's warnings about Cindy. As the past and present blur together, Fred finally finds peace. Meaning of the movie. This story explores how Murd is not just a It allows a person to relive and navigate their memories, experiencing different points in time. But in the end, Fred's journey was never about Cindy or escaping reality. It was about understanding his past, facing his fears, and finally moving forward. I hope you enjoyed this explanation. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.